So it looks like Hamas is back in charge. In some cases, a video has surfaced with basically gunmen on the top of convoys riding through northern Gaza. Now, there is a bit of a question about what exactly is happening there, but Israel is reacting to it, and at least from what we know, it does indeed look like at the very least, Hamas is, or Hamas-aligned organizations or Hamas-controlled organizations are in charge of distribution of aid in the northern Gaza, which wasn't supposed to happen. So that's one of the topics we'll discuss today. We have a few side topics. I'll mention them in case we don't get to them or do get to them. Abbas has wrote to Trump congratulating him on breaking the ceasefire between Iran and Israel and saying maybe he can move on to two-state solution next. There's also a bit of a not optimistic poll that basically majority of Israelis believe that Hamas will stay in charge of Gaza after this war, which especially with this recent event, I can understand that sentiment. And also Khamenei has recently spoken out claiming victory in the recent conflict. So that's one of the things we can cover later. But let's go to this. So joining me today are E.R. Reichel, Marco, and Richard. And before I go to any of you guys, let's just play the short video that was shared around. So I think that's enough. It goes on for a bit longer, but it's pretty much the same thing. You have some gunmen on top of the 8 trucks, celebrating, shooting in the air, which on some level, it's such a weird thing. If you even like go back and think about the idea of Hamas stealing aid from their people, supposedly like people that are like ruling over or they are supposed to govern over, and celebrating stealing that aid, and the fact that them doing that is something that Israel has to deal with. The fact that Hamas is stealing aid is something Israel has to deal with, not Hamas. I mean, yeah, to go to you, this was something that should have been sort of over. Israel, at least in southern Gaza, set up its sort of like own humanitarian distribution sites. But it looks like this is coming back again.
Well, I think it all comes down to the fact that the Israeli policy makers for over 3 decades are basically terrified of the word occupation. And we keep trying to do mishmash, weird solutions that never work. Because out of context, Israelis are just like, nope, you're not going to be occupiers, no matter the circumstances, and it's never justified. And they give all sort of excuses, international law. It will bring up demands against Israel. It will weaken Israel geopolitically, and of course the ultimate claim that it is immoral. Now, of course, in such circumstances, occupation of Gaza, it's the only moral thing to do right now to eliminate the Palestineism political movement to destroy Israel. Since we're not doing that, we are trying to count on other militias to counter Hamas, or to use American companies to distribute aid, which we shouldn't have should have delivered in the first place. And I think the question whether Hamas rules Gaza or not, as long as Israel does not officially occupy Gaza, it's basically a question that refers to non-essentials. Like it doesn't matter. There is Palestineism in the people's minds in Gaza, and it's all a bunch of tribes united to first and foremost destroy Israel, and only later on they can move on to destroy each other. And you can see it in their statements and behavior and it's been going on for 2 years. So now there's a little bit of cracks, and they're starting already to fight each other. It doesn't really matter as much now. For the another reason for the situation in Gaza is basically this is according to some news I've seen lately. Trump wants to conduct a mega deal involving Iran and Syria, Saudi Arabia, and other Muslim countries. He wants like a huge ceasefire, hopefully the return of the hostages, and then Israel would have like semi-peace agreements with Syria, Saudi Arabia, other Muslim countries, and then Gaza will be held by Arab countries, and there will be perhaps even something leaning towards the way of a two-state solution. Now, obviously, those who are, if it's not the first time you're watching me, you know what I think about that. But I'll just say in short that this plan, I see this plan as naive. I think the main and most essential problem with this strategy is that it, as I said again, I said it in the past and I'll say it again, it gives moral sanctions to tyrannies. It allows them to exist. It sees them as partners for deals and agreements. And Israel and the United States, in the broader terms, can only lose out of it. The only solution is taking over Gaza, removing the regime in Iran. Every other midway solution we're gonna attempt is gonna lead to more bloodshed and more destruction.
Yeah, I mean, to go to you, Marco. Well, I mean that I've seen that sort of like Trump wanted to make a deal. I haven't seen this like overarching thing. I know that Witkoff has recently said that something along the lines of unlikely nation is interested in joining Abraham Accords. If that unlikely nation is Iran, then I didn't expect that.
That's not what I meant. With Iran, Trump's want to reach to some sort of agreement that will allow the Ayatollah regime to exist, but they'll be removing their nuclear program, etc., etc. But there will be no normalization between Israel and Iran.
Well, even that separately, I've seen Trump apparently is not interested in a deal with Iran anymore. So, okay, I'm not sure, but that's maybe for a separate topic in the upcoming days. I have a quote from Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister, maybe future prime minister, who has commented on this basically with the video we showed. And he said, "Soldiers in the field explained to me that these are the current instructions to allow trucks without control. This continues to feed Hamas with money and power. Government ministers promise that not a grain will enter, and as usual, reality is the opposite. Shameful." I mean, to go to you, Marco. Yeah, there was a whole problem between basically Smotrich and Netanyahu had an argument that Smotrich said pretty much no aid should go in, and it looks like temporarily aid will be halted from going in. But how is that even like still a debate? It's I cannot even like find a comparison because it's so crazy. The fact that giving aid to our enemies, how much the questions are, how much should we do it, when should we do it, when should we stop it, instead of ever asking why are we doing it in the first place.
That's right. I mean, we lose ourselves into details rather than the principle behind it. Listen, ultimately, there are no contradictions in the world out there. Nature doesn't make a mistake, so something either is or it is not. A granite rock on liquid water will sink because of the nature of the rock and the nature of the water. Now, the nature of our mind allows us to conceptualize and abstract. So you could imagine a situation where a rock floats on water. But again, in the real world, this doesn't make it a contradiction because in the real world, the rock still sinks in the water. Now, when you have an institution that wants the death of America and the MAGA people who want peace, any deal between the Iranian and the US will mean that the Iranian will kill fewer people in America, and the US, by nature of making a deal with Iran, will have to accept by default some American death. The compromise only makes the good side, the guys that want peace, slide down towards the demands of the bad side. Equally, you cannot have a body like Hamas who wants the destruction of Israel and Israel itself. This is a contradiction. You cannot have the people who want the death of Israel, the people who are for death generally, versus the people who love life and they are for life in the Middle East. So, in order to solve the contradiction, you have to observe the nature of the two entities involved. And if you do not get rid of the evil side, if you don't make sure that the Gazans are unable to behave in the way that the Gazans have been acting for the last 20 years, well, there's not going to be either not going to be in Israel, or the Gazans have to change their ways. Any compromise, any meddling, any middle of the road solution will always be a defaulting of the good versus the people who want death. So there is no dealing with the Hamas. There is no providing them with anything that people need, because they need to be wiped out. That's why from the very first few days after October 7, 23, we called for Hamas to be wiped out. Again, you cannot deal with people who want your death. The only thing you can offer them is a bit of sacrifice. Okay, I accept you're not going to have my death, but have my arm or my leg instead. This is not right. If you want to have an Israel, if you want to have a Western civilization, you have to wipe out once and for all these people who want our death and our destruction.
Yeah. So before I go to you, Richard, let me quickly thank our super chatters. First, Bonnie, thank you so much. Paul Zeus, thank you so much. And Jeff Bannister, thank you so much for giving 5 Ayn Rand Center UK memberships. People can find out more about their perks in the bot description and YouTube chat. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's business as usual, isn't it? It's as we were. That's what's happened here. It's as if the records jumped. We've heard the sudden scratch and surprise of seeing this 12-day war, seeing Israel actually fight back with clear moral objectives and a clear success. And then the record has just, slipped back. The needle slipped back into the groove. The record is playing as before, and it's the same old tune, isn't it? It's Ali Khamenei lambasting the Zionist state. It's Hamas stealing aid. It's humanitarians high-fiving the need to high-fiving each other, and the fact that that aid is now being taken back into Gaza, and yet it's as if nothing happened in that sense, and that's really quite depressing, isn't it? I mean, you hear people talk a lot about perpetual war, but they don't talk enough about perpetual aid. When it comes to this region, perpetual aid has been the perpetuation of war ultimately, and it is ridiculous that we should be in a situation where people are essentially celebrating the fact that Hamas are able to take the aid once more, and it's better that they do that than the Israelis have control over the distribution of the aid or try and control the manner in which it's distributed. Because the morality is so messed up that they think that is a worse situation than Hamas taking the aid. So there are so many justifiers for the kind of video we've just seen, which really ought to disgust anyone. The fact that terrorists are taking the food and therefore, denying it to the people who need it, but those people aren't overturning the terrorists who control them and the country that has got them, so suppressed, their own government of Hamas. So I think it's, and at the same time, people are saying that Gazans are starving or on the brink of starving again, as we hear perpetually the endless claim that that's the case. when clearly it's not.
Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing the idea that there's not enough aid going into Gaza, I mean, forever. And yeah, when you mention the forever or perpetual war, or as I hear it more often, the forever war. Yeah, I mean, the idea that people like say those things and they do not connect with anything. The fact that everybody or people complain about, it's forever war, but also nobody is really evil on the other side. It's all just innocent people. Hamas is apparently this almost like divine institution that is somehow able to be everywhere, know everything, immediately kill anybody who sort of dissents, so no Palestinians can even stand up to them, and but also we cannot really fight them because they're having people hostages. I mean, yeah, ER, to go to you. Like at this point, pretty much, at least from what I see, talked about, nobody, the idea of like occupation on Gaza is not really that much on the table, especially with the Iran war. Sort of like the Gaza issue, little bit fell to the side. I mean, when was it, yesterday or day before? It's days are going by. 7 IDF soldiers died in Gaza, one of the biggest sort of casualties, or sort of like one incident casualties for a long time. I cannot even remember the last time something like this happened. And it didn't really change anything. It won't change anything. The idea is still the same. IDF needs to provide aid, or Israel needs to provide aid, needs to let aid into Gaza, and it cannot do anything.
Yeah, so first of all, on the incident, so on Tuesday, 7 soldiers from Engineering Battalion 605 were killed in Khan Yunis. Basically, there are mixed versions, but of what I've heard, there was a decoy. A bunch of Gazan children came to the soldiers asking for food. This was a decoy to keep them distracted. In the meanwhile, terrorists, probably Hamas, managed to sneak to their Puma APC. He threw an explosive charge inside, and the whole thing exploded and killed 7 soldiers. I also want to state that since the start of the ground operation in Gaza, so I'm not counting October 7th, but since like Israel sent soldiers to Gaza, 435 Israelis died in Gaza. And this is a huge price we're paying for doing it wrong, for feeding our enemy, for taking care of his needs, for providing aid, for basically indulging in the immorality of the whole view of humanitarianism, which is a distortion of justice, in which a nation, in this case the Palestinians, has no responsibility for their choices and murderous actions, and they are entitled to get aid while they're trying to kill every Jew in the area. So this is just horrible, and this brings me to my basically main point, that when we look at technology and capability and motivation and manpower, we have what it takes to destroy our enemies easily. And we've seen a demonstration in Iran until we stop. But the beginning and the damage we've made to Iran, even before US involvement, is spectacular, and it cost us very few casualties, especially when you compare it to Gaza. Now, in Gaza, we don't need special Air Force runs with refueling tankers and extreme intelligence and Mossad operations. We just need to close the tap and give the Palestinians should use their choice to surrender. As long as the Palestinians do not choose to surrender, being the tyranny that they are, and after the attacks they've launched on us, the massacre of October 7th, they're responsible for every death. And we should have the moral capabilities to say that explicitly. Say, we're closing the water, no food comes in, and you're free to surrender and turn over your weaponry. and we'll take over Gaza, and we'll move on from here. We'll either re-educate or start like install some sort of a regime there that is friendly to Israel, and Israel can supervise it or whatever. I don't know, but like the point that we're just like back in the previous U.S. administration, all we did was to go in and out of areas without even clearing them. Now we're starting to clean the areas, and we do like a sterile, slow flattening of Gaza to create a humanitarian areas that we might be able to reduce the terror activity over there. So we're paying a huge price and getting ambushed, and you know, the Hamas and other militants are playing like rats, hiding underground with gas that we like diesel that we gave them and food that we gave them, and then they just come out of their halls, blow themselves up, or just throw explosives and run away. So it's like it's a complete shame, and we should have done it differently. And again, the two reasons are basically altruism and humanitarianism, and also that in Israel, the Israelis basically made a decision that the hostages, that it's an implicit decision, but basically in effect, Israelis are basically saying hostages' life means more than soldiers' life and Israelis' life. And basically implicitly, they will never say it explicitly, but implicitly they're saying it's okay to risk the life of soldiers, and as of now we have hundreds of casualties in Gaza, so we wouldn't cross the line, so any harm would be done to the hostages. Now, regarding to this point, the hostages are Israeli innocent civilians that were kidnapped, and this is a very important goal to get them back. And of course, Hamas has the moral responsibility, the primary moral responsibility for them being kidnapped is on Hamas. Of course, the Israeli government also has a moral responsibility for failing to prevent it and to stop it and to destroy Hamas before it even happened. Once they're there, Israel has a responsibility to retrieve them and to rescue them. Yet, we cannot, the means are not justified by the goal. We cannot do it in any means whatsoever, including risking and basically leading to the death of hundreds of soldiers, and risking the home front, and making this war take 2 years. And we should take risk and increase the war on Gaza, even if it means that hostages are at risk, because we cannot kill hundreds of soldiers and basically risk millions of Israeli civilians and make this war go years and go sterile and slow and steady while the enemy is ambushing us, and it cannot keep going this way. We're paying a huge price, and there is a lot of families that lost their children, their soldiers, their 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-olds, and also fathers that are gone, fathers in reserve service. And a lot of families have lost their men, and also we have like thousands of injured soldiers, and they'll suffer their whole life, and they were injured because of the way we are acting in this war. But this discussion is never being made explicitly in Israel. People are afraid to talk about the matter of hostages, because whoever talks about it gets smeared. He's attacked. He's being tried as heartless, as evil. So this is a very difficult situation in Israel, and this is also very sensitive. And the hostages are suffering, and the situation is horrible. And they're being held for years in Gaza under horrible and evil monsters, Hamas terrorists and other organizations like the Jihadic Islam and other just families that holding them, torturing them. So it's such a hard thing to talk about. It's completely, and we're going to a disaster here. It's very hard.
Yeah, and when it came to fighting Iran, Israel, I think, showed one of the most unique, sort of even moral attitudes toward confronting evil. But it looks like when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to fighting Hamas, or rather fighting Palestinians. We haven't seen anything, unfortunately, close to that. We had one instance when Israel shut off any aid from going into Gaza. But as soon as Palestinians were starting to run out of the resources, they let it in. I think it was earlier March or April or something like that, where for a few weeks Israel stopped anything from going in. And when they were actually running out, Israel was forced to let it in again. I mean, Marco, what is it? How can one country have such a both misunderstanding or sort of misapplying of moral standards when it comes to understanding exactly how to attack Iran, what to fight, but when it comes to going after Gaza, it kind of vanishes?
Well, I think the technical term is pragmatism. You know what to do now in order to deal with the situation now. You never plan ahead. You never make sure you stick with principles, and you never make sure that what you do now impacts favorably the future. It makes your future better. Ultimately, I don't think it's a moral choice that Israel did over Iran. It's just a practical thing. They planned the military actions. They didn't have a particular morality behind it. They didn't want to topple the regime or making sure that the Iranians are free again and all this kind of stuff. They just added an objective, getting rid of the nukes by the Iranian, and they went in. This is the plan. This is what we do if this happens, and blah 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 blah. So it's a series of military actions. I think very much detached from any morality underlying it. Because how would you explain that the country who was able to pull off the pager attack on Hezbollah and wiping effectively out Hezbollah, the country who put the Islamic Republic on its knees militarily, is totally unable to deal with Gaza. I mean, Gaza is not something that just popped up of the works. There was a disengagement in 2005. Following that, they've been building tunnels, throwing missiles and rockets on a constant basis at Israelis. And then they did October 7. How is it that we still have a Gaza out there? How is it that we don't understand that the enemy is not Hamas, it's the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people are Hamas. The Palestinian people are the people who cheer when we see these gruesome spectacles of the hostages released. The Palestinian people are those that help Hamas to take the food from the trucks. The Palestinian people create decoys, using even their kids, in order to kill a few Jews. The Palestinian people use their kids to actually fight, and use their kids as bodies that can be counted, whether they're dead or not, it doesn't matter, we count them anyway, in order to make Israel look like it's on the wrong side. So once you realize who your enemy is, you have to stick with it. You cannot just falter and try to pander to the super rotten, corrupt morality coming from the West that tells them stop, provide aid. I mean, when in history an enemy has been forced to subsidize their attackers once you are still at war? This is a farcical situation that only Israel is required to work these kind of standards. Only Israel has to provide food to the people that have been attacking it for decades. We're talking, from the foundation of the state itself, it's been under attack. And every time it's Israel is the one who has to calm down, come to the table, and behave civilized. Well, the civilized way is to get rid of the threat, get rid of the people who are causing all this kind of problems. And certainly providing aid, providing water, providing electricity is not part of Israel's job. Moving people away from the areas where you're going to attack the military installation of your enemies doesn't help. If they choose to stay there, there will be collateral damage, because they help the military organization of Hamas by effectively acting as a human shield. they're quite happy to die for the cause because, again, these people worship death. They do not care about life. They do not care about civilization.
And
Sorry, Richard. I'll just bring in one more thing. So basically, after all of this, all of basically the video came up. Netanyahu, or Prime Minister's office, in the statement said, following information received today indicating that Hamas is once again taking control of humanitarian aid entering northern Gaza and stealing it from civilians, the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister have instructed the IDF to present within 48 hours on operational plan to prevent Hamas from taking over the aid. I think a solution is simple, but I just wanted to bring in as the last thing that IDF has 48 hours to come up with one sentence: don't allow aid to go into Gaza.
Yeah. And then to act upon it, and then to argue why it's the moral thing to do until those who are stealing it actually surrender their ideology, surrender the hostages they still hold. And then there might be a future which maybe can involve some aid, but not until that point. I think on the 7 IDF soldiers that were killed in Gaza, I mean, those guys were 19, 20, 21 years old. They're the same age as the students in Colombia who were protesting against this war. And those soldiers died for the morality that those students in Colombia, their counterparts, are arguing for. They died for the morality of altruism. Those kids that approached the vehicle were used as bait in order to lure them in, and they died for that fact. Again, they're expected to pander to the children of the enemy that is holding your hostages, that is holding this dreadful threat over Israel, and that carried out October the 7th and hasn't relinquished any of the reasons why it did so, and claims it would want to do so again and again and again. And you're supposed to capitulate to that. I mean, there is a sense at this point, and it's too early to say, but who surrendered at the end of this 12-day period? Who surrendered, and to what ideal? Was it to the whim of the US president? Was it to the pragmatism of stopping now? Was it to the egalitarianism of the fact that terrorists are humans too, and it's not fair to continue to bash those bullies? I mean, as Marcus said before, we're being asked here to feed your murderers, to nurture your murderers, to apologize for the fact that for their desire to want to kill you. And that is completely messed up and completely wrong. I think some of the descriptions I've seen in the articles related to what should happen with aid now, and you talked about the 48-hour window whilst they sort it out. I mean, one of the phrases that struck me in one of the articles was there are concerns that the way the aid is being done is designed to cater to Israeli military objectives. The survival of Israel being the military objective, the survival of Israeli soldiers not being murdered while protecting the fact that aid is being handed out. It's just obscene. And then the fact that there's, and it's hard to tell from here, to be honest, but the fact that there may not be the necessary inspections of the trucks of that aid that are going in is an extra concern on top of that, in terms of what weaponry or what other illicit materials might be being taken into Gaza. So not only are you feeding your enemy, but you're giving your enemy potentially more tools to kill you with, and you're certainly not holding the morality that you should hold if you're ever going to win and ever going to make this a better situation for all.
I'm gonna bring in a few more things, but first let me remind people that the Daily Objective will be live on stage on July 1st in Boston. A link to sign up for that is in the chat. It's on July 1st, so it's only 5 days away or so. You'll be able to meet Jonathan Honig, Raza Ginsburg, Jim Brown, Michael Kaufman. I'll be there, and also Zoltan Sendes, the writer of An Objectivist Guide to the Galaxy. So make sure to join us there. You can sign up using the link in the description and in the chat. So to go to you, Iyar, now, wondering if we should bring in more things. I'll just mention this, but take this with a large grain of salt. So according to Haaretz, which already is not a good start, they've said that some of the local people have said that the aid that was delivered in that video or was going to be delivered was actually delivered to the sort of storages where it was supposed to be. Now, even if that were true, that Hamas didn't steal the aid, this would still mean Hamas or some other terrorist organization is in control of the distribution of aid. Whether it was this one time distributed correctly or not, the most important point is no aid should go there. The second minor pragmatic point, maybe terrorists shouldn't be the ones distributing the aid and having, and even if they do distribute it, of course, they might still check up the prices. But again, that's once I start arguing the pragmatic side of this, I feel like I'm losing anyway. So
I have a very short thing to say about that. Every discussion regarding the nature of the aid is non-essential. The essential thing is we give our enemies aid, and we do it because we cannot allow ourselves to be proud and say these people are immoral, they started a war against us, we are not helping them, and because we were afraid of what the world will say, and Israel being scrutinized, and it's just a shame. It's just we've paid in blood for this way of acting, and it's very sad.
And so to bring in more topics, I think the first one, a recent poll came out by the Jewish People's Policy Institute, indicating that 57% of Israelis estimated that after the war in Gaza, Hamas will continue to rule the strip, possibly under a different name or in a different setup, but basically the same kind of terrorist organization, the same kind of rule will still be there in Gaza. Now, of course, just because people think this will happen doesn't mean that it will. But to go to you, ER, what is the sentiment in Israel? And are you shocked by the findings that it looks like majority of Israelis do think that basically Hamas, that nothing will change? In fact, that basically Israel, either there will be some sort of a deal, some sort of ceasefire where Israel will completely pull out and leave Hamas in charge again.
I don't know. It depends. I think essentially, it's a matter of pride. And pride in the objectivist term is the ambition to be moral and to be explicit about it. And pride is the sense of achieving that. And the Israeli people, in this sense, are very proud people, in the good sense of the word. I don't know if it's enough. If we can demand without compromise to take over Gaza, to destroy Hamas, Israelis cannot almost not explicitly talk about the whole matter of Palestinism. They're still focusing on Hamas, but it's the whole ideology. Basically, Palestinians is people in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria who hold a certain premise, who are basically members of a certain political movement. And this political movement ultimate goal is the destruction of Israel and the murder of the Jews in Israel. So we cannot give it any hint of implicit moral sanction, which is in effect what we're doing by allowing the Palestinian authorities in Judea and Samaria, by not taking over Gaza. It's been 2 years. We could have taken the proper measures long time ago and lead to the surrender of the Gazans and the return of the hostages, and it wouldn't cost us in such amount of human life and soldiers. And the Israelis did not allow them to do that or to even demand that. There are some movements demanding that, but they're not getting the approval of the masses, unfortunately. And we're paying a price for that. So I don't know how it will end. I hope like I know it won't be the ending I want. I know it won't be like going all over Gaza, closing the border, leading to their surrender, re-educating them, starting a regime that basically will, like as I said in previous show, like forcing a constitution that will respect individual rights, or even Israel taking over the area. I assume this is not going to happen. So the next best thing is like, I don't know, like everything else will be bad, but like hopefully it won't be like something in the direction towards a Palestinian state, or a mechanism that will allow to Hamas somehow to remain in existence, some sort of a technocratic government or whatever. This will be a catastrophe, a disaster, and just like it will be it will cause strategic damage to Israel for generations.
Yeah, I mean, to go to you, Marco, something more interesting I found in the poll that it looks like Arab Israelis are more optimistic that Hamas will not be in charge of Gaza after this war, which I found interesting. I think about 57% of Israelis in general, and when you just control for Arab Israelis, it jumps down, I think, like 10 points. It goes to like 45 or something like that. Yeah, also separately, one of the things ER said reminded me of sort of going back, I think like a year. Yeah, I think that July. I was in America then. I remember that. There was, I think, one of the IDF spokesman has said something like, Hamas is an idea, it cannot be destroyed. And I think Marco and Richard maybe did an episode on that. And when I remember that, it was like the exact, like, you have the thing and you do the opposite what you should with that. Like, yes, Hamas is an idea. Palestinianism is an idea. It is an ideology. That's why it can be destroyed. You can fight against them. If you recognize what they are, and if you know what they stand for, and that they are anti-life, that they are anti-coexistence with Israel, you can actually fight that. But pretty much that sort of that comment from the spokesman sort of acknowledged the fact that from the day one, Israel wasn't thinking about this war properly. So the fact that majority of Israelis now think that Hamas will stay in charge of Gaza makes sense. Marco?
Yeah, if anything else, kind of shows that 43% are not really connected with reality, because it's obvious that Hamas has been showing how to fight a war. They're not crippled by a morality which has got nothing to do with the aim. They are very, very consistent. They hate Jews. They have this racist hate fueled by Islamic beliefs against the Jews. And everything they do is directed to achieving their goal, their genocidal goal. And they don't buy, they don't get scared if their leaders get killed. They carry on. They are showing Israel how you should actually behave. You have your principles and you stick with it. The only problem, Israel knows what the principles are. They knows that life is much better than death. But do they actually apply every single resource that they have in order to achieve their objective? No. They constantly cripple themselves with altruism, more worried about the Palestinians, the very people they are supporting Hamas and all the activities that have been going on. And they're so worried about not hurting Palestinians that they allow 400 of their own young people to die in pointless ground operation. All you needed, a couple of missiles, flatten Gaza, and then, okay, let's sit at the table, let's talk. We show you why we did it. But after the fact, you don't get hoodwinked by Macron or by the EU or by some crazy nutter in the United States that thinks they can make a deal with whatever. This is just insane to assume that you can fight this kind of evil just by words, just by smiling at them and providing them with food. They don't care. They take your food and they use it to kill you. I mean, we are so detached from reality in the West. We don't understand that. These guys mean what they say. Kill America means kill America. Destroy Israel means destroy Israel. They do not want Israel. I mean, clearer than that, I don't understand why even the Israeli, which should be used to living with these people by now, don't realize that they're not your friends. As things stand, based on the ideology that motivates them at the moment, they're not your friend. They are your enemies. So you do not go in the streets and chant in favor of your enemies, because your enemies at the same time are not doing the same. As we speak, Iranian people that supported the strikes in Israel are being rounded up, hanged, incarcerated, tortured. But no Gazans are doing this. No Gazans is going to jail because he's coming up and protesting against Hamas, saying, come on, Hamas, you're being a bit too harsh. Return some hostages. Let's sit around the table. The Gazans are not doing that. The Gazans support Hamas 100%. And even if there are a couple of people that happen to disagree with Hamas, and the Western press makes a big fanfare about it, making it look like the Palestinians are really rising up against Hamas. Well, that's a lie. That's not happening. If it did happen, you would have more people killed by Hamas itself. So the Palestinians are supporting Hamas, the Palestinians are Hamas, and they are right now the enemies of civilization.
My view is that these polls have next to no value at all. I don't think they can tell you very much at all, to be honest, because the clarity is so absent for all concerned. And without that clarity, how do you interpret this poll? Do you interpret it as people are resigned to this being the fact, that the status quo will continue as it's done up until now, and Hamas under a different name will run the strip? Or do you interpret the fact that some groups are more gullible than other groups and more inclined to believe their leaders when they say it's going to be different this time? Is that what it means? Does it mean that some want it to change but expect it not to? I mean, I question the point of these polls when it's the clarity of the argument that is completely absent on both sides, and it just the case hasn't been made clearly. And I think there's also far too much, and this applies all over the place all the time. Far too much expectation that the now, the familiar, is the forever. And that is simply not true. I mean, you look at the West, for example, people think in the West that progress, that freedom, because they're familiar, are here forever. And they are not. They need to be fought for every day. They need to be defended every day. And we see them slip through our fingers very quickly if we don't do so. And here, in the case of Gaza, the same is true. Just because it has been, the mess that it has been, doesn't mean that it should always be so. Doesn't mean that it can't be changed. Doesn't mean that there isn't a different way of doing things. But the argument needs to be made in the first place. It needs to be made clearly, loudly, consistently. And it needs to be made by all of those that claim to be on the same side, rather than some that claim to be on the same side but argue for the opposite, i.e. that Gaza should continue as it is. Otherwise, the argument is so messed up, it's not clear, and no poll that claims to interpret it from a populist point of view is going to have any meaning.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about sort of people expect the status quo to be forever really reminds me of Atlas Shrugged, but I cannot even say exactly which part. But this idea that the way it is now will always, or sort of the good things about that they are now, especially when you talk about the West, the fact that, I guess from Atlas Shrugged, it will be something like, well, they'll figure out a way how to solve this. It's a problem, but they'll figure it out. There is this expectation of like somebody will come in and solve this. Somebody will come in and make it good. But the fact is, no, it's a choice. The Western civilization was a choice that was made over hundreds of years, from sort of a focus on this life, from a focus on understanding the ideas that make civilizations great, but it's not automatic. It's not like this will just be here. At some point, there will something more need to happen. But sort of now jumping to the last thing I wanted to bring up is that the claiming of victory. So we had Khamenei probably coming up from his kilometers behind the ground bunker, finally coming out, and he probably is still not out, if we're honest. But he said something like, despite all their clamor and claims, the Zionist regime was nearly brought to its knees and crushed under the blows of the Islamic Republic. The thought that such strikes could be delivered by the Islamic Republic never even crossed their minds, yet it happened. And this reminds me of that meme of, the dog who is like in the house that's on fire saying, this is fine. It's Iran was the country that was brought down to its knees. And if Israel, or if, God forbid, America wanted it, Iranian regime would be wiped off from this earth. But he's claiming victory. But to go to UER, if the war is truly over, if some deal gets made and Iranian regime lives another day, I mean, what else does Iran need? All evil needs is a sanction of the good. That's when they win. So, sort of on the other side, you have also Netanyahu saying, we fought vigorously against Iran and achieved great victory. And he goes on, but just wanted to bring in that. Yeah, Israel did accomplish some of its goals, but Iranian regime is still here to fight Israel through its proxies, to fight Israel directly another day.
Well, I see here a very interesting inversion. Iran was basically got its ass kicked by Israel and then later on by the United States, militarily speaking, yet they claim for a military victory. So that's one inversion. On the other hand, Trump basically, as of now, is handing Iran a diplomatic victory and claiming a diplomatic victory of his own. So it's completely inside out and upside down. I don't know what is going on currently in the negotiation and what outcome does Netanyahu and Trump are trying to achieve. The only acceptable outcome on my behalf is the removal of this regime by any means necessary. There is no any other thing that will allow this regime to stay in existence is bad. And now we're just talking on the levels of how bad is it. Will it be a regime that will be free to develop another arsenal of missiles, maybe try again to develop a nuclear weapon and keep funding its proxies and affect the West? So that will be the worst of the worst. Or a little less bad of a situation will be basically this regime existing, but under heavy supervision from Israel and the United States and freedom of action of Israel, basically like a diplomatic green light for Israel to attack Iran when they find some sort of a violation of the terms. So in this bad scenario we had, in which basically the West is giving a moral sanction to Iran, the least worst case would be at least giving Israel the green light to like, clear it up from time to time, like we do right now with Lebanon. So Israel is free to, diplomatically free to attack Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, which it does. So that's like the compromise we're at currently. So this might be where we're going, bundled up with normalization agreements with Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, Lebanon, Syria, and probably a deal, unfortunately, with Hamas. And as I said, the good side of it, we might get the hostages back. There are 20 that are estimated to be alive still in Gaza. I hope the prices won't come and bite us in the future with more death, destruction, and disasters.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Marco, I mean, one more thing I could brought in. Khamenei has also said something like, I'm paraphrasing hard, but they showed its force also against American bases and will not hesitate to strike again if Iran is struck again.
Yeah, that's the bit that gets interesting, isn't it? Because it pains me to say, but Khamenei's got a point there. He's shown that actually, in the end, he can get America to stop. He can get Israel to stop, even when he knows he's in a military position of weakness. Yet he's still around. Yet his regime is still out and about. People are being rounded up, as I mentioned earlier on, and punished for helping Israel during the military operation. They still have intention to enrich uranium. They withdrew from the IAEA. And as far as sort of supervision, well, they were supervised until now, and they still enriched uranium up to 60% enrichment. So as long as this regime exists, they are the victors and we're the losers. I mean, we were a few hours, days, perhaps a few weeks away from a potential nuclear holocaust. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. They had enough material to create a bomb in a very short time. They might still have it. We don't know yet for sure. They might have hidden some stuff. They might have a backup centrifuge place we don't know about. I don't know. And also thrown in a mix, Trump has signaled that he wants to put their hands on the material that the Iranians have enriched. So if that's part of a deal, you can guarantee the Iranians are not going to go for it. So that might mean another bombing from the United States and Israel, hopefully. But at this point, as things stand, from the information we have, I'm afraid Khamenei's got a point. He's shown that he's the strong one, and we've lost the diplomatic. And to be honest, they have the strong hand. They've shown that they can do what they like. They can break any UN resolution. They can break any agreement. They can break any promise that they make and still get away with it, and still terrorize their own people. And they're still there. He's still there to talk about this kind of crap. Why on earth? Don't it's beyond me. But then again, I'm not privy to the intelligence that the Americans and the Israeli have. So, but as far as I can tell, he's actually right.
I think Ali Khamenei is, in one sense, you could describe him as comical Ali again, in the same way as the Iraq War. But at the same time, all dictators, they always pretend that they are still strong right up until the point that they're hiding in a sewer pipe and then they're dead and their regime has fallen. So there is that on the one side, but Marco is right to talk about in the way he does it. But you cannot expect a lifelong mystic like Ali Khamenei, who's been bent on the destruction of Israel, who's been bent on defying reality his entire life, to suddenly come out with anything other than this kind of statement, particularly when he unexpectedly finds himself still breathing at this point when he shouldn't be. And therefore that for him is a victory. And that is a proof that Israel and the West are weak. So to that extent, it is certainly depressing, to say the least, that he's even able to give such a speech. And therefore to present any kind of argument whatsoever. But we cannot expect irrational people who have led their entire lives by irrationality to suddenly discover rationality. If they've been irrational for so long, they are corrupt to the core. And to be honest, even when we discuss Trump in a different way, he's quite an irrational person, and we can't necessarily treat his actions as rational in this instant, even if we can defend them as rational ourselves. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's doing it from the best motives, and therefore it's integrated into the rest of his thinking, and he's suddenly going to change his spots. No, clearly not. And the reason we're in this situation is because of that. Where people choose to be rational and choose to think about the long-term consequences, not the short-term pragmatism, not the immediate now, but what the principles that really underlie it all, then there's a future. But until then, you're always going to get this mixture of nutters like Ali Khamenei calling, for the destruction of Israel at the point when Iran really is on its knees. And I only hope the Iranian people will help see his regime toppled from within.
As you were talking, I had this image of Khamenei telling Netanyahu, I want to be a good guy. And Netanyahu say, Ali, it's too late.
Well, I wouldn't put, I won't spoil where this is from so people can read Ayn Rand's books. There's a bunch of them and they are great. So you won't, even if you don't find the reference, you'll be grateful, I think. Somebody in the chat says, I don't think they have won. Look how many of their leadership was put down. Look how much resources were taken away. No, it was beneficial to some degree. This presupposes that this was like an equal sort of like boxing match, that two guys went in, one got 15 points, one got 8 points. I have no idea how box works. I don't know if it's points, but something like that. That basically after one round, the other guy scored more points. That's not true. Iran and any dictatorship, any evil is cancer. And when you completely don't get rid of it, it's still there and it will come back. Iran will not suddenly like liberalize and, because it was shown that this is the right way. It was shown that you can actually do this. You can develop nuclear weapons. You can kill Israelis. You can kill Americans. And even when they try to fight you, you'll be able to get away with it. They weren't told Iran needs to modernize. They were told what you're doing now is perfect. It's working exactly as you want. Same thing Palestinians have been told since their creation. The fact that, no, keep fighting against Israel because the West will keep supporting you. They'll give you infinite right to do whatever you want, kill as many Jews as you want, and nothing will ever happen to you. This is not the same thing that happened to Japan or Germany, where they were told, okay, you have one choice now, modernize or you'll get wiped out. ER, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Small update. So in the past 12 minutes or so, the Houthis in Yemen launched a ballistic missile against Israel, and it broke apart on its way to Israel. I see it mostly as an indication for the weakening of Iran, because basically the Houthis are completely depend on Iran to supply them with supplies and munitions and missiles, etc. The real question is it a temporarily weakening of Iran, or are we finishing the deal? And by finishing the deal, I mean throwing this regime to the trash can of history. Hopefully, it will be the latter. I am Iyar Reichel. I'm an associate of the Ayn Rand Center Israel. Please visit aynrand.org.il/about. I'm also a member of the Victory Now movement. We're working on a book to show Israel and the world a plan for Israel's victory and moral groundings for Israel's victory. You can find us at www.victory.now. Thank you.
Marco, last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, I mean, contradiction cannot exist. You cannot be free and at the same time be an Islamic slave under Sharia law. So it's either or. But of course, it doesn't have to be. It's a human choice. It's down to free will. So we can all choose to be free, or we can all choose to give up and become slaves. Now, going back to Iran, Iran is still producing oil, still selling to China, still making money, still passing money to all sorts of people. They even admitted, really, that they have sleeper cells in the United States. I mean, if that's not a declaration of war, you tell me what. So give me a justification for this regime to be still around. But then again, altruism. We are more worried about hurting them than we're worried about hurting our people.
And when it comes to what ER just told us about the Yemen and the Houthis, I think it's another reminder, isn't it, that Iran within this region has used proxies for years, hasn't it? It's used proxies partly militarily to spread the direction in which weapons are fired from and always at Israel. So it's partly militarily, but it's also to deflect the blame from themselves, so that people are always blaming some other group and not blaming the source, which is the ideology that Iran is supporting and has been funding. So to see it break up, presumably of its own accord, is a good thing. But the fact they can fire it at all and that they exist at all is obviously a bad thing. I think. Hearing Mahmoud Abbas talk about the courageous stance of Trump and try and pander to Trump's ego or whatever, in order to try and manipulate him into making his next whim one which favors what Abbas wants, only exposes the fact that the West and Trump hasn't necessarily done what it's done so far. With a consideration for the real principles involved, and that's why they can be so buffeted about by things such as being manipulated psychologically and all the rest of it. So we'll see what happens next, but your confidence in any one of these is always temporary, because you know that what they happen to be doing right now is only a happen to be doing right now, not a full understanding of why they should be doing it, not just right now, but forever. And in terms of where people can find some of the work we've done, you can check out the Briefly Objective. The link is in the videos on this channel, where it says for shorter content, click here, and then you can find short edited versions of some of the chats on this channel with added visuals to really get the point home. So please do like and subscribe those and add them to your social media. Thank you.
And let me remind people again that if you like the show, you can actually come and see it live on stage in Boston, July 1st. Learn more about it using the link in the chat and in the description. With that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective. Until then, bye-bye.